Today is Sunday, January 6th, and this is Celtics Beat on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio-video coverage of the Boston Celtics. I'm Adam Kaufman. Episode 296, featuring Celtics radio analyst Cedric Maxwell, is brought to you by Robinhood. Get a free stock when you sign up at celtics.robinhood.com. Hey, welcome into a new edition of Celtics Beat. First time in 2019, and there is a lot going on with this team. Kyrie Irving and Marcus Morris battling through injuries. We know Aaron Baines is still out. The defense desperately misses him. Jaylen Brown playing better. Terry Rozier loves starting. Gordon Hayward probably wishes he could face the Timberwolves every single night, and inconsistency continues as we approach the midpoint of the season. So, Happy New Year, right? Celtics radio analyst and former NBA Finals MVP Cedric Maxwell with me. You can hear him across the C's radio network, and he is kind enough to join me on this show a few times a year as well. Max, how are you, man?
No, I'm doing fine. All those things you said, other than that, everybody's still alive. Okay, great.
Well, you spent New Year's on a plane. I hope you're not a big watch the ball at midnight guy.
No. I think once you get older, those years start coming around. You're not looking forward to just, okay, let's go to the next one. No, let's just load this puppy up a little bit. So, being on the plane and coming back here, getting here late at night, that's kind of what we do. And you sign up for that as an analyst, as a player, people who are around this game.
I always love your stories. What's the wildest New Year's Eve you can remember?
Man, the wildest New Year's Eve that I remember, and team-wise, and I can tell you about, actually was, I want to say like 1980, Larry Bird's first year here. I think Kevin's first year too. Larry's first year. It was Larry's second year. And Larry and I went out, and I challenged Larry Bird to a drinking contest.
Okay.
And we were in Salt Lake City, Utah. And, man, I tried to drink with Larry, and he drinks like a fish. And next thing I know, I was on the side of the road in Salt Lake City feeding the animals. I was so sick. Do remember that well. And the next day we played Utah. They had these bright colors. They were purple and green back in the day. And the fluorescent light that hit the floor hit me in the eyes, and oh my God, it felt like I was being blinded. So that was one of the craziest nights I remember for New Year's Eve, and being with the team and being with the fellows. See,
anybody can go look that up now. Go to Basketball Reference, check out the box score. But do you remember how you played in that game?
You know what? I don't know. It's one of those. Normally I remember games. I remember doing okay, but I don't remember playing well. It was just like I just felt like I was in between. I have to go back and look that up myself.
I'm going to look it up while I'm on the horn with you right now. I'm going to look it up. So you think it was early 80s?
It was like early 80s. I want to say it was like 1980. I want to think because we bought the new year in for whatever reason. We were in Salt Lake City, and it might have been 80, might have even been 81 because it seemed like I remember Kevin McHale being there. So it could have been Larry's second year, I think, second or third. When did Kevin came second or third year? But I think that was the time it happened.
I found it. New Year's Day, Salt Lake City for the Celtics. It was 1983. 1983, You're in Utah. You played 22 minutes. You shot 4 out of 6. So, you might have been hungover, but you could see the rim at least. And you had 9 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists.
Oh, did we win the game?
That is the most important thing, right? You won the game.
I was a contributor, but in a light way. Okay.
Yeah, won the blowout too, 127-112.
Oh, okay.
But all right, enough of memory lane for the people out there. They want to hear about this team in 2019 and what to expect and all that stuff. And let's go to some individuals. Let's begin with Gordon Hayward because multiple 30-point outings about a month apart against Minnesota, but 11 games in between, Max. Fewer than 9 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists per on very poor shooting as well. This right here is what he said after his 35-point night on where he's trending.
As the season goes on, I think my movement is getting better. I think there's still so many things to work on. You just in 2 games, night and day. So consistency is going to be huge to have not necessarily games like this all the time, but just games where I'm aggressive and attack as opposed to being passive.
So have you seen enough of the good moments to believe he's going to return to where he was pre-injury in time for the playoffs?
Well, I'm starting to see it, and I think it's increments, bit by bit. I remember when I was hurt late in my career here with Boston, I wanted to say 1985, and I was out for about 20 games. I played a game came back and played against Detroit Pistons in the playoffs. And I had, 25 points, a really good game. And everybody said I was back. I knew I wasn't back. I was like, no, I'm not back. My body was telling me that. I think everybody said the same thing when Gordon Hayward played that huge game against Minnesota
the first time.
Weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the first time when he had 30 points. There was a difference between those two games, dramatic difference. The difference was there was no Kyrie Irving. The difference was that Gordon Hayward took over that game, and he wasn't being spoon-fed, but he controlled the game. He was being a facilitator late in the game. There were several times early in that basketball game, I remember saying loudly on the air, Gordon had the ball under the basket, and I was like, he passed it to somebody else. I was like, shoot the ball, Gordon. And I'm not sure if he just kind of went through him and hit him, but he got back to making plays for himself. So it was night and day between those 30-point games. And that 30-point game he had, the last one, versus Minnesota, that was a game where he became a facilitator. He was in control. He wasn't being spoon-fed. He made plays on his own. And that is when you start to see a guy kind of rounding the corner.
Well, and it really is, it's the little things. I know I don't need to explain that to you, but it's the little things that we, and when I say we, I mean the fans or people who didn't play the game like yourself, don't necessarily understand. Like you listen to Hayward after the game and he talks about how well he's doing laterally in terms of his movement, but still needs to work on his vertical movement, still needs to, work on some of that comfort. And you can see in some of these games the comfort jumping off of one foot, jumping off of either ankle, whether he has soreness after the fact, what's his playmaking ability, because let's be real, unless you're an NBA junkie and you got league pass and all that, pre-Gordon Hayward coming to Boston, short of people watching highlight reels on YouTube, not a lot of people were staying up late and watching Utah Jazz games. They didn't recognize what it was that Gordon Hayward can bring to the table here in Boston. The problem is we still don't know, short of these flashes, because of that injury. And there is that great potential. You and I have had this discussion before about his two-way ability and where that sits him on this team in terms of the overall hierarchy, who's the best all-around player. And we know what Gordon Hayward can be. I just wonder, will he get back to that point, and how quickly can it realistically happen?
It could happen this year. I mean, if you think about glimpses and seeing things the way it happened, and I think it helped out a lot in the last game because Kyrie wasn't there. Kyrie is ball dominant, and that's not a bad thing. But when you think about a guy like Gordon Hayward, who had multiple touches, has to make plays on his own, smart player, aggressive, you saw all those instincts come to light in the second half of that game. And because of that, I felt so much better about watching him play and his progression. He will get back to being this great player. But like Sean Grandy said, my broadcast partner, he said, it's going to click in that he believes that he's Gordon Hayward. Right now, that's his name. But you have to believe that you're that player that the Celtics coveted, that most of the league was afraid of. So Gordon Hayward was a problem. One of the things that I talked to Brad Stevens when you first got Gordon Hayward, he told me during the exhibition season after it was over last year, he said, Max, I found out what I'm going to do in late games. I'm going to use Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving in pick-and-roll situations. Well, you didn't even get 5 minutes of that, before Gordon Hayward went down. So these things now I think are going to come true, and I think you also have to look at the patience of the Celtics, the patience of Brad, And the way, and also the courage of watching the guy come back from an injury and trying to believe in himself.
Tom Westerholm from Mass Live had a column a couple of days ago about this story how Marcus Smart was egging Hayward on in practice right before he went off in that game against the Wolves the second time. We know that teammates, coaches, executives, owners, everyone has praised Smart for years for his intensity, aggressiveness, defense, attitude, you name it. I know Smart's the longest tenured member of this team. He's certainly not the best player on this team, but is he in some ways the unofficial captain of this group?
I think that you're correct. You're right in that way. I think that he has taken over that mantle as the emotional captain and leader of this team. When you watch him and some of the things he said when the Celtics lost early on, he said about being aggressive, about playing 100%. You know, he is that guy who leads by example, and guys follow that same lead. When you see Marcus, he's just the winner. There are a lot of times when people will scream about, oh, my God, he's shooting too much or he shot and that. Forget about that. Marcus Smart makes more great plays without the basketball than anybody I think I've ever seen on this team.
When it comes to all that, too, like Marcus Smart, and he has had his success playing alongside Kyrie Irving and starting here and there, obviously, as well. But another guy who's been, as we know, very limited in his opportunities to start because of Kyrie, Terry Rozier. And I'm not the least bit surprised, Max, that Rozier has played well in his opportunities to start because, and I've said this for a long while, maybe I've said it to you before, he's not a microwave player. He needs to get into the flow and rhythm of the game. He needs to play 30-plus minutes. The numbers certainly bear it out, whether last year in a large sample size, this year in a very small one, just a few starts. Do you agree that Rozier has to start to be effective, or do you think he can be a valuable reserve for this group?
I think he can be a valuable reserve, but he has to know how to fit himself into it. A lot of guys are, want to be starters and get starters minutes because you kind of ease into the game. There were times when I saw him get limited minutes that he forced shots. He was trying to do things, trying to be overly aggressive because he knew he was coming out. He has a very, very tough job. When you start playing behind the ace, or it'd be like playing behind Tom Brady, where your opportunity is going to come in. That is where he is, unfortunately. And, everybody knows he can play. Everybody knows that he would be much better if he could get 30 minutes a game. But on this team, unfortunately, he's not going to get those kind of minutes because of those guys who are ahead of him.
Whenever Terry plays well, too, and you hear this, I'm sure. I know you don't feel this way, but you hear it. You see a segment of fans say, see, we don't need Kyrie Irving. This was going on throughout the playoff run last year when the team overachieved without Irving, without Hayward. It was, get rid of both those contracts and build around Terry and the young guys, and you got Brown and Tatum and blah, blah, blah. We know that's nuts. You need Kyrie Irving to win a championship. He has hit the biggest shot in NBA Finals history. But there's no disputing, and you brought this up before, the ball movement appears much better at times when he's not in the lineup. Kyrie is very ball dominant. Is that because guys are too deferential to him offensively? What do you attribute it to?
I think because he's a ball dominant guy. There are times when he will get into modes where, he'll come off the dribble. They'll put him in pick and rolls. Now, he makes great decisions, but I think the ball does slow down when it's in Kyrie's hands. But that's the way Kyrie Irving plays. He's a great player. I mean, remember how great Magic Johnson was. Magic Johnson was a ball-dominant guard. The ball stood in his hands, and he made those decisions. Kyrie Irving is the same way. He's a ball-dominant guard, and he makes those kind of decisions. You see guys in this league right now, and this is what this league has come down to. When you look at Steph Curry, ball dominant. Now, they moved the ball maybe a little bit more after, the pick and rolls and the ball movement. James Harden, I don't even like to watch him play, but he's a great dominant ball player. So the game has changed a lot now where you have guys now in these pick and roll situations, being ball dominant, and making those decisions.
Yeah, I don't need to see Harden go to the free throw line 27 times in a game. That's not my kind of basketball.
I totally agree with you. I mean, after watching him, it was and I realize he's a great player and it works for them. But here's the thing that's the most amazing thing to me. Thinking about the kind of players that they had in OKC.
Mm-hmm.
Westbrook, Harden, Durant, Serge Ibaka, Jeff Green, Jeremy Lamb, Reggie Jackson. Oh, my God, that is one of the most amazing young teams that they could not keep together because of salary cap. But I can't even imagine how the ball was popping or who didn't get the ball in those situations.
Well, and they were too young. They weren't ready to win. You know, those guys hadn't obviously seen their potential. I mean, you're talking about a few MVPs in those first few that you mentioned. It really is incredible. I hate breaking from Max. We'll get right back to him. Today's show brought to you by Robinhood. Never a bad time to start thinking about your investment portfolio. Whether you're looking to buy or sell stocks, crypto, ETFs, make sure that you sign up for Robinhood. And I know markets can be complicated, but Robinhood makes everything easy for you. Robinhood's going to build you your own customized news feed right when you sign up. They sort certain stocks for you in different collections like the 100 most popular or social media, pharmaceutical. You'll learn more about it as you go along. Get started today. Sign up is extremely easy. All it takes is 4 taps on your phone to start trading. Best part, Robinhood doesn't charge commission fees. You keep all your profits. Robinhood's giving listeners a free stock like Apple, Ford, Sprint to help you build your portfolio at sign up. So get there, Celtics.Robinhood.com. That's Celtics.Robinhood.com. All right, back to Max. On Terry, you and I, this is just what we get to do. We get to banter, but we're not the decision makers. We know how important depth is, but does it make sense for Danny Ainge to trade Terry before he can walk away for nothing?
No. It really doesn't, because in this situation, if you're the Celtics right now, what do you have? Are you more concerned right now with the future, or you're more concerned with the right now? What would happen if, in fact, Kyrie Irving, who's often been injured, goes down again?
Mm-hmm.
You have that ace in the hole. You have that guy you can go to who can play at a very, very high level, as we saw him do. So I think there are times when you say, well, you know what, I hope Terry is in a situation that he's able to play 30 minutes. Does Danny make a move to trade him? What are you trading him for? So I think that, you use your pieces, and eventually if there's something that comes up, you make that move. But right now, I would not trade Terry Rozier.
Well, and to that same end, another guy who can and I expect will walk, Marcus Morris. He's been incredibly valuable to this team. He's been Boston's most consistent player aside from Irving, maybe more consistent in a lot of ways. It's hard to imagine where the C's would be without him, and I don't even want to think about that. Owner Wick Grossbeck reiterated to the Boston Globe last week the group is willing to do what it takes to roster a winning team. He's said that for years. Should they pay to keep him this summer?
I would love to see him kept here. He is, without question, this year, the most surprising player, their most consistent player. And more than anything, he's my favorite player on this team because of his attitude, his cockiness, his grit, his determination, him getting up in guys' face. In this league, you don't see guys get up in the other guy's face or in their mug and treat the opposition the way I like to see the opposition being treated, because that's why they're the opposing team. When you watch him play, he asks for no quarter and he gives no quarter. And I love that. He doesn't have the next guy's phone number trying to call this guy up and say, hey, let's go out to have lunch or let's have dinner or, I'll give you a call a little bit later on after the game. I think he might not even have his brother's phone number. I'm not sure because he just seems like that kind of guy at the end. He's so single-focus-minded about the way he plays. I thought of all the guys this year who were going to take a back seat, I thought it might be him because I just didn't see where those minutes were going to come. Mm-hmm. But he's gotten consistent minutes. He has been the most I would say he's been the most consistent player they've had. Shooting the basketball from the outside, being aggressive, hitting big shots, rebounding the basketball. there were so many things he's able to do as a player that, I love his determination.
Well, and he's worked on that three-point efficiency, sort of abandoned the mid-range jumpers from last year, which is great. But was that a little subtle shot at Kyrie getting Joel Embiid's phone number after that Sixers game?
No, I didn't even know he got it. I really don't like it. I mean, I don't understand, again, how you're going to – I see a lot of these guys practicing and working out together. I wouldn't do that because I'm showing you my best move. So you're watching me every day. We're working out together, so you're able to counter that move.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't particularly like the idea about playing, working out with guys. I can understand playing against them during the summer for a competition and keeping your game sharp. But just to say, we're going to work out together, we're going to take shots together, we're going to work on our footwork. And I'm not doing that with other guys during the league. I never did as a player.
Well, I guess the problem along those lines is so many of these guys have the same trainers, and so they do work out together and go through drills together and develop those friendships, and maybe that last part's okay for recruiting and all that.
There's a million trainers all over the world. So you don't have to have the same trainer.
Mm-hmm.
All this thing about, we got the same guy, we're working out. No, you don't need the same guy. Well, if you do have the same guy, work out at a different time. So that's how I believe in the game. And, I see guys, and when I have that healthy disrespect for another team, that to me was fantastic. That's how I felt about the Lakers. That's how I felt about, Philly. I mean, even right now, I can barely shake a guy from Philadelphia's hand or somebody from L.A. If a person comes up to me and say, hey, man, I'm from Los Angeles, I just pull my hand back. Oh, whoa, you're from L.A.? Okay, man. Even when I went out there this summer, I happened to be out there a little bit and saw people out there, and they would see me, and they were like, oh, my God, I can't believe you're out here.
And you played in L.A., not for the Lakers, but, you were out there.
I got booed when I was out there. When I went to the Clippers, all my teammates got cheered. They introduced me my first game with the Clippers when I was playing there. I got royally booed. So I was never a fan favorite anytime in Los Angeles.
Nor a favorite of the fans, obviously. On the subject of working out, Jaylen Brown, who'd he work out with over the summer? I think it was Tracy McGrady. He's played significantly better in these games after Christmas, shooting very well. It's not just scoring. He's actually got that shooting rate up. We know he's been banged up. He's had the injury. He's seemingly been in his own head quite a bit this year. Do you think he's turned a corner, though?
It looks like they're all turning the corner. And the best thing about it is you would rather for them to struggle now than to struggle in the playoffs. The later it gets in the season, the more aggressive, the more in tune you want to see your players. And I think that seems to be the case. As early this year, there were bits, there were pieces. One guy would play well, another guy wouldn't play well. And they even started with the first game of the season, first exhibition game. We played it. The game was at Chapel Hill. And I watched them for the first quarter, and I was watching the ball movement. I was watching the shots. I was watching how aggressive they were. And they went up by 25 points. And all of a sudden, they just stopped playing. And that seems to be a case a couple of times this year when they have just stopped playing. They've had huge leads, and all of a sudden they just take their foot off the gas. They have to continue to put their foot on somebody's throat until that person doesn't move anymore.
If you jump into the analytics, the advanced metrics, Max, the Celtics, they're a top 10 offensive team, a top 5 defensive team, top 5 net rating, top 10 in effective field goal percentage. Does it surprise you they aren't even a top 4 team in the East, at least in regard to the standings?
How about let's put all those analytics in the trash can?
Okay.
How about that? Let's
all right.
flush the toilet, okay?
Yeah.
I'm more about what's in the guy's chest. You can tell how a guy competes. And, analytics, there are things about it which are cool. I understand that. But to me, it's like, people using analytics and saying, well, I'd rather have a 3, attempt a 3 than, a 2. Well, here's the thing I always tell people about that. And I'm not sure if they do the analytics on it. if I score around the basket, which that was my home, and I can tell you a lot about this. If I score around the basket, I'm pretty devastated because, one, I was getting a higher percentage shot.
Mm-hmm.
I had an opportunity to get a rebound if I missed my shot. And the biggest thing, I had an opportunity to get a guy in foul difficulty. And when you get in foul difficulty, the guy was not going to hurt you anymore. So, we can talk about those shots, but to me, again, it's that those shots, and somebody just gets too carried away with the analytics of the game instead of watching the true nature of how games are won and lost on very small plays.
There are so many people saying, and to some degree you as well, because you believe a lot of these guys, whether it's Brown, Hayward, maybe Rozier, if his confidence is renewed from starting when he gets back to the bench, as he obviously will sooner than later, that they've turned a corner. There are a lot of people saying they'll be fine come the playoffs. They'll be fine. I guess I'm wondering, why? Because there's so much talent. What evidence have we seen so far in the first half of the year, just about, is there that they'll be fine?
Well, I think one of the things you see is you're starting to see a concentrated effort of their talent coming together. And if they're healthy, if Gordon Hayward gets back to being Gordon Hayward that the Celtics signed, or somewhere close in there, that gives you that other guy to control the basketball, to make plays, to hit crucial shots. That's going to be a key. If they stay healthy, you can see right now by having Aaron Baines out, that big brick wall that he is as a player helps them out immensely when you think about playing up against a guy like Joel Embiid, because that's the one guy that Embiid is not going to go through or push him towards the hole when he comes back from his hand injury. So I like the combinations that I see. The biggest thing I say is the consistency of this team. That's what they have to do. It's, like having a great cake. If you put too much of this in it or put too much of that in it, sometimes it doesn't work. The Celtics talent level is so high that sometimes it seems like it just doesn't mesh together. One of the best moves that Brad Stevens made this year was inserting Marcus Smart into the starting lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's like, well, why is that? Why is that? The reason why, because he's a facilitator, and he does not need the ball to be better. When you had Gordon Hayward starting, and you have Brown and Tatum and Al Horford and Kyrie Irving, most of those guys need the ball to be effective. When Marcus Smart got into the lineup, that eliminated a lot of pressure and gave up shots to other people and opportunities around the hole. So there's some things that happen with this team which are really, really good and are going to be outstanding for the years going forward.
Do you still work out a lot?
Absolutely not.
I'm asking that.
No, what I do a lot. I have been in Boston now. This is my 22nd year as a broadcaster.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't owned a car in 22 years being back here. So a lot of times I walk. I walk every place I go in Boston. A lot of people see me. I live right downtown Boston. A lot of people see me downtown in Boston. And so I do a lot of walking. Periodically I get back into those modes where, we all get back to the gym. But I know that this year is my claim again to get back in the gym, to get back into a beach body for this summer. So,
that faulty New Year's resolution?
Yeah, we all have them. That's why the gym is always full that first week after New Year's, and then all of a sudden the drop-off. So I'm waiting maybe for about 2 weeks before I go back to the gym again consistently, because all the machines will be free then.
Yeah, it'll empty out within a month for sure. But I'm asking because, you're a big guy vertically, but you're not a big guy horizontally, and you talk about food all the time, and you're eating food, at least according to Grandy, pretty frequently in and around the radio as well. And I'm just wondering how it is that you do stay so slender.
Well, I think that my metabolism is still pretty fast. I said do a lot of walking.
Yeah.
Drink a lot of water. I try to watch kind of what I eat. I try not to eat, real late at night or eat a lot of, I'm a sweet junkie. People ask me how about being a broadcaster, how I do so well sometimes, or come up with these crazy lines that I might use. And I always tell people, you put your brain on Pepsi and Dippin' Dots in the game. It's like jet fuel, man. Your mind someplace that you wouldn't even think is It is. So I do still enjoy, and then I'm a clothes horse.
Yeah.
So I can't, blow up, because if I do, that
won't
means
fit in those suits anymore.
All over again. Yeah. So I still love the art of dressing, and I've been doing that since I first got in the league, and even now, even more so now. I almost wish our players were more like that now, because when I first got in the league, I followed the theme of JoJo White and Charlie Scott and guys like that who were great dressers. When I first came with the Celtics, that was one of the rules that we had. Anytime you were on an airplane, you had to have a jacket on, sports jacket or a suit or a turtleneck. You had to be more like dressed up going out in the public. So I wish our players were like that. I understand it's a new generation, but still I think I carry that on.
Yeah, now you just got people, the Westbrooks of the world and Hardens and LeBron, whoever's showing up in a leopard print crap. And it's everyone's going for a fashion statement, but it's not the same one that you guys were going for.
No, I think that some of, the things that Harden and Westbrook, some of the stuff they wear, that's just shocking. I mean, I've seen sometimes and see some of the things that, and I always tell guys, because, they have some of the greatest bodies in the world, less is more. All they have to put on is a nice dark suit that's fitted well, shoes that shine, a good white shirt, nice ties, some cufflinks. You are set. We never saw that. One of the best dressers we always saw that people talked about was James Bond.
Yeah.
James Bond never have nothing flashy on. He always had a nice dark suit on. Shoes will always shine. White shirt. Everything was crisp, cufflinks, nice watch. That is, just a classic look that, I like to go for, and I wish more of our players went for.
Max, I'm going to have you listen to a couple of things here and then get all sorts of opinions from you, but I'm sure you heard some of this last week. LeBron James, quite a statement on ESPN, one of their ESPN Plus shows, while reflecting upon his championship in Cleveland.
I was super, super ecstatic to win one for Cleveland because of the 52-year drought. Like, I was ecstatic. The first wave of emotion was when everyone saw me crying. Like, that was all for 52 years. Everything in sports was going on in Cleveland. And then after I stopped, I was like, that one right there made you the greatest player of all time.
All right, so that made people question whether Michael Jordan would ever say the same thing. So someone dug up this 2009 interview with Mike Wilbon when Jordan was asked about the GOAT label.
When I hear it, I cringe a little bit because, it's a little bit embarrassing because if you ask me, I would never say that I'm the greatest player, and that's because I never played against all the people that represented the league prior to Michael Jordan.
All right, so I'll first tell you this, Max. And Kevin McHale, your old teammate, he called LeBron's comments disrespectful to those who came before him, along the same lines of what Jordan was talking about. I don't believe a word out of Jordan's mouth. I think in privacy, he absolutely believes that he's the greatest player of all time. But the fact that he was at least, handled it the right way, was humbled enough. Plus, it's a big difference when someone calls you the greatest and you either accept or deflect or whatever versus calling yourself the greatest. And so LeBron, it's moments like these that don't do LeBron James any favors.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. But didn't we hear Muhammad Ali say that he was the greatest?
Yeah, but he said that even before he did anything. That was like his whole shtick, and then he proved it.
I mean, he proved, but LeBron James is on a short list. I mean, and it's a new era now where people are self-promoting. And I don't have a problem with it. I think, matter of fact, in my opinion, I think he is maybe the greatest player of the play because of what he's able to do. But I do agree with Kevin McHale and Isaiah and having some humility about yourself. That sometimes let other people say that for you. But he was on the show, and probably somebody asked him a question. And he said about 52 years. I'm thinking of doing the math. I'm like, wait a minute, you're only 30-some years old. How you know all this history about Cleveland?
Yeah, well, he's like those Boston fans that are 50 that absorbed the 86-year curse of the Red Sox.
Yeah, so that was kind of funny. But to me, how many names do we go by before we get to LeBron James if you're talking about one of the greatest players?
Yeah, it's a short list. Is it more than 5? Is it more than 3 that you look at? But it's a new era and it's a new time.
in athletes, actors, people, politicians are self-promoting. There's a gentleman down in Washington, D.C., having to be the president of the United States, self-promoting. People do that all the time. So I think it's a new era and a new time. I felt a little strange listening to that with him saying it, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to get away from that argument. And the argument he also was talking about was, he said about being the GOAT, he said, wow, look what I was able to do against what was the greatest team of all times in Golden State, being down 3-1. What an accomplishment that was. And even with that, he still didn't do that by himself, because he had Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, he didn't hit the winning shot.
One of the biggest shots. But you put LeBron James, his statement in that was, what kind of block shot was that he made?
Mm-hmm.
That shows his versatility as a player that, to me, makes him possibly the greatest, because I think he is a better defender right now than Michael Jordan, better rebounder, and better facilitator. Obviously has to be a better three-point shooter now, because the three-point shot is such a weapon. So there are a lot of things about his game to me which, put him above maybe where Michael Jordan was at.
If you had to, and I'm asking you to do it on the fly and not put a whole lot of thought into it, and like you said, LeBron's in the conversation, but what's that top few list look like?
No, one guy I would go with automatically, that would be Olajuwon. And the reason I say Olajuwon is the best player that I ever played with and played against is because of what he was able to do and watching him. He dominated the game on both ends of the floor better than anybody I've ever seen. And you think about that. He was a better defender than Russell. I mean, just as good a defender as Russell, but better offensive player than Russell. He was, you look at the way he did it. There's some stats that he had, which he had like, I think he's only a handful of guys in this league who've ever had like the quadruple double. I played a game with him when my last in the league, and it was, I want to say, Seattle in the playoffs. 42, 26, 8, and 8 in a playoff game.
That's insane.
And, the things he was able to do. You name me a player right now that has dominated both ends of the floor better than he did. Now, you think about Jordan. Offensively, yes, better player. But he didn't dominate the way Hakeem Olajuwon dominated on the defensive end. Hakeem was just a beast. I mean, he, to me, is that player that, people don't look at, other if you're a Houston Rocket fan or some hardcore basketball fans, really know how good Hakeem Olajuwon was.
No, legend. You're right about that. I'd be very curious to see where he'd fit into today's NBA, just because, as we know, that low post presence, that guy that is a dinosaur today. You have to be able to float out to the arc, to shoot from three, all that.
Let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. What would Kareem Abdul-Jabbar fit in the game today?
Well, and that's to the point. I mean, I think that's to Jordan's point, to so many people's points about how it's so difficult to determine a quote unquote greatest ever, a GOAT, because you're trying to compare eras, and the game is so different now than it was before, when some of those other guys, the Bill Russells, the Jerry Wests, the, like you said, the Kareems, the Hakeems, all these guys were playing in. I mean, even Jordan, and obviously Jordan would fit in just fine in this era, but it's a different era.
Yeah, it really is, I think, because everybody has to have the three-point shot in their arsenal. And I think that's what makes it so great when you look at a guy like Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is that millennium player now that is long. He's a seven-footer. He shoots the three. He runs the floor. He blocks shots. If he's not the first player you think about in this league, he's the second player you think about in this league. And now you look where the game is evolving. And now you have the Greek freak. So the game is just, has changed in a way now that I don't even understand it in just watching it.
Towns, Kristaps, all these guys. In terms of the bigs, you're right about. And I'm just glad, by the way, that, and sort of a running gag for people who listen to this show, that I'm not the one who brought up Anthony Davis amidst all the things that are going on in New Orleans. There's no Davis trade talk on this particular show. We know it can't happen before July anyway. And but it is interesting, Max. Before I let you go, just seeing that he is frustrated in New Orleans. This wasn't the case last year when they were winning, when they were arguably overachieving. He's now upset, and it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not he accepts that Supermax contract when it's offered to him, if it's offered to him.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting there, because players like that kind of force their way out, and they'll tell the team that they're not going to sign an extension, and they have to be moved. You saw that several times. You think about some of the guys who've moved around over the years who said, nah, I'm not signing that new deal, so you're going to have to make a move to trade me. And Carmelo's one of those guys you think about who did that in Denver and moved to other pastures. But
Kawhi just recently, among others.
Kawhi Leonard,
Paul George.
So guys in the NBA, a lot more than when I played, control where they want to play. Anthony Davis, obviously, you think about it, how good he would make this team if you add another piece like that with a Kyrie and the young players you have. But how much talent would you have to lose if, in fact, you had Anthony Davis? And I'll tell you a quick funny thing. I was talking, Jason Tatum's dad came up to me one day, and I had been on Comcast and they asked me about Anthony Davis, and they said, would you trade for Anthony Davis, and would Jason Tatum be one of those guys involved in the trade? And I said, all day. I would trade for him all day long. And Jason Tatum's dad came to me a couple of days later and said, man, I got a bone to pick with you. I was like, what? He said, you said you'd trade my son for Anthony Davis. I said, and he said, well, I probably would trade him too if he wasn't my son. So I think that you have to look at that. Everything would be on the table if you could get a guy like that. Even I talked to Tatum and told him that story about his dad and stuff. He said, yeah, I trade me too for Anthony Davis. So I think everybody knows how great Anthony Davis. But the cost that it would take you to get him probably would be those guys like Tatum and Brown and Rozier, the future of your basketball club.
See, there you go. To my producers listening, that's the headline for today's show. Jason Tatum's dad would trade Jason Tatum to the Pelicans for Anthony Davis. Jason Tatum would trade Jason Tatum to the Pelicans for Anthony Davis. Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Cedric Maxwell, radio voice of the Celtics radio analyst alongside Sean Grandy. Always fun, always a pleasure, Max. We'll do it again before the season's out.
All right, thank you very much, man.
That right there. That's a fun way to start off 2019. See, we started off with a great story, Max getting hammered on New Year's Eve, and we land on Jason Tatum trading himself for Anthony Davis and a whole lot in between. I encourage you to go back, enjoy if you missed anything, and with that, we're going to get out of here. Today's show brought to you by Robinhood. Get a free stock when you sign up at Celtics.Robinhood.com. Thanks to my producer, Evan Valenti. Thanks, of course, to Max for hopping on again. Guy he cracks me up. Thanks to Nick, to Larry, to John, everybody at CLNS Media, and, of course, you. Thanks for always finding us on. You can get me on Twitter at Adam M. Kaufman. You can find us on iTunes.
Myself for Anthony Davis. I said, and he said, well, I probably would trade him too if he wasn't my son. So I think that you have to look at that. Everything would be on the table if you could get a guy like that. Even I talked to Tatum and told him that story about his dad and stuff. He said, yeah, I trade me too for Anthony Davis. So I think everybody knows how great Anthony Davis, but the cost that it would take you to get him probably would be those guys like Tatum and Brown and Rozier, the future of your basketball club.
See, there you go. To my producers listening, that's the headline for today's show. Jason Tatum's dad would trade Jason Tatum to the Pelicans for Anthony Davis. Jason Tatum would trade Jason Tatum to the Pelicans for Anthony Davis. Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Cedric Maxwell, radio voice of the Celtics radio analyst alongside Sean Grandy. Always fun, always a pleasure, Max. We'll do it again before the season's out.
All right, thank you very much, man.
That right there. That's a fun way to start off 2019. See, we started off with a great story, Max getting hammered on New Year's Eve, and we land on Jason Tatum trading himself for Anthony Davis and a whole lot in between. I encourage you to go back, enjoy if you missed anything, and with that, we're going to get out of here. Today's show brought to you by Robinhood. Get a free stock when you sign up at Celtics.Robinhood.com. Thanks to my